We're only 3 weeks into the Trump administration, and yet their war on free speech and free press continues to escalate, with the Trump White House actually kicking out the legendary Associated Press because they believe that the AP did not honor Trump's renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which the AP doesn't have to do. And it's so bad that even a legendary conservative Fox News host is publicly speaking out against Donald Trump for doing this, calling out the Trump administration's censorship. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, we got a lot to talk about here, but I want to start with this one, and we'll unpack it together, but Mediaite reported this. Fox's Brit Hume posts brutal slam on Trump ban of AP as, quote, attack on press freedom. And again, we'll get into all this, but Fox News chief political analyst Brit Hume, again, a legendary conservative Republican, posted a brutal critique of Donald Trump's decision to ban the Associated Press that described it as, quote, an attack on press freedom and, quote, unconstitutional. And he added, quote, I agree. Trump signed an executive order on Inauguration Day changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, an edict with which several organizations have begun to comply. But the AP has thus far resisted, and they have every right to do so. There is no obligation by the Associated Press to honor this name change. And this week, Trump punished them for it by banning the wire service from White House events. The move drew widespread criticism, including from Hume, who posted a scathing statement from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, and we'll get into that, okay? But let's get into what Brit had to say. I agree, he wrote, with the above statement. So I guess we should actually just read the statement itself. Let's wind it back and give the Associated Press's statement, then we'll give FIRE's statement, and then we'll get into Brit Hume, since Brit basically co-signed what FIRE had to say. So this is from the Associated Press. As a global news organization, the Associated Press informs billions of people around the world every day with factual, nonpartisan journalism. Today, we were informed by the White House that if the AP did not align its editorial standards with Donald Trump's executive order renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, AP would be barred from accessing an event in the Oval Office. This afternoon, AP's reporter was blocked from attending an executive order signing. It's alarming that the Trump administration would punish AP for its independent journalism. Limiting our access to the Oval Office based on the content of AP's speech not only severely impedes the public's access to independent news, it plainly violates the First Amendment. So that's the Associated Press's statement. FIRE, which is nonpartisan. By the way, they went after the Biden administration and Democrats left, right, and center, right? Go back through their news, go back through their reports, go back through their legal challenges. They are truly an equal opportunity offender in terms of going after both sides, both political parties. Having said that, this was FIRE's response to this. Punishing journalists for not adopting state-mandated terminology is an alarming attack on press freedom. That's viewpoint discrimination, and it's unconstitutional. Donald Trump has the authority to change how the U.S. government refers to the Gulf, but he cannot punish a news organization for using another term. The role of our free press is to hold those in power accountable, not to act as their mouthpiece. Any government efforts to erode this fundamental freedom deserve condemnation. Which brings us back to Brit Hume. I agree, he wrote above the statement. Many users who commented on Hume's post were supportive, with one even writing, quote, even Fox News can't abide by this one. When you've lost Brit Hume, now a MAGA apologist but once a respected journalist for ABC, you've really stepped over the line. Just to be clear, as someone who's been both a journalist and a government employee, it is not ever, in any way, shape, or form, the government's job to hold the free press accountable. Free press beholden to government is not free press, period. Thank you, Brit, for your leadership in speaking out there. Important to all members of a free and plural press, stand together to hashtag hold the line now and in the future. And again, this is what we see. I agree. That is a shockingly principled take from such an openly, legendarily conservative Republican who, yes, at times has been critical of Trump, but loathed the Biden administration, loathed Kamala Harris, loathes the Democratic Party and everything it represents. I want to play some other clips, though, unpacking this a bit further. This is House Judiciary ranking member, my favorite Democratic congressman, Jamie Raskin, discussing some of these issues.
Yesterday, Donald Trump banned the Associated Press, a 179-year-old newspaper organization, from the White House because it declines to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. This is straight-up press censorship based on retaliatory viewpoint discrimination. Trump's DOD kicked out 8 news groups that had space in the Pentagon, but which asked skeptical questions of the new secretary, including the New York Times, NBC News, and the Washington Post, all ousted in favor of outlets willing to faithfully advance the party line of the state, like Breitbart and One American News Network.
It's shocking. As far as I'm aware, I think with the possible exception of one replacement, all of the replacements are openly right-wing. Breitbart and others as well. I think the Daily Caller maybe. I mean, it's just shocking. One American News Network, shocking stuff. Imagine if under the Biden administration, they kicked out the New York Post or Fox News and replaced them with MSNBC or Pondering Politics, Brian Tyler Cohen, something like that. Imagine how the Republican Party would have reacted. But of course, the Biden administration, which is morally superior to the Trump administration and much more principled, never did anything like that. Here's another clip.
More sweepingly, Trump and his FCC are using their powers to investigate, sue, and threaten news groups that dare to criticize the administration. Trump is suing CBS for $20 billion in damages because, check this out, he believes an interview with Kamala Harris produced too favorable an impression of her. So that means that I could sue Fox News because I think their interviews with Trump produce too favorable an impression of him. I mean, this is lunacy. And now, exploiting his asserted unitary executive powers, Trump is unleashing his sycophant FCC chairman Brendan Carr on every news group whose stories he doesn't approve of, actually threatening to pull the government broadcast licenses for ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, and NPR. Nothing of a hostile nature, of course, has taken place against Fox News, which is now the de facto state-approved media, enjoys immunity from the repression visited on its liberal competitors. What is this, North Korea?
So again, a masterful point by Jamie Raskin here that I'm actually going to play another clip from. Actually, I'll say this. Let me jump to this one first because we're going to also hear from Jerry Nadler more about Brendan Carr, the dangerously ideological right-wing maniac who is chairing the FCC. So think about what Jamie Raskin just said. Donald Trump is suing CBS because he felt that their edited coverage or their edited interview with Vice President Kamala Harris produced too favorable of an impression. Well, Trump won the election, right? So impressions obviously were relatively favorable towards him. And by, again, their own logic, Trump's own logic, as Jamie Raskin points out, couldn't anybody sue or Kamala Harris sue Fox News because Fox News produced favorable coverage for Trump? And while you're thinking about that, consider the edits that Fox News has done to Trump interviews, as Jake Tapper on CNN points out.
And dangerous attempt by a politician to control the news media. Broadcasters have a right to edit interviews. It's editorial judgment. For example, Fox in June 2024 aired this.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
But that wasn't Trump's actual whole answer. It was a taped interview. And as Semaphore noted at the time, Mr. Trump, in the full, unedited version, sounded a lot less definitive about releasing the Epstein files. Here's the whole answer.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know it. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened there because that was a weird situation and the cameras didn't happen to be working, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd go a long way toward that one.
Quite different, right? Now look, Fox had every right to make that edit. Now, did that edit make Trump look more decisive, less equivocating? Did it make Trump, therefore, look better? Yep. Was that why Fox did it? I have no idea. Maybe they just had some timing issues.
And again, he goes on to provide other examples, but I think this makes the point, which is that CBS did nothing different than what Fox and right-wing media have done for Donald Trump time and time again. So by, as Jamie Raskin points out, by Trump's own standard, by the right wing's own standard, Fox should be liable or should be subject to lawsuits from Kamala Harris or Democrats who say, well, listen, if you're going to sue CBS on these grounds, I can sue Fox on these grounds. But they never want the standard to apply to them. Now, let's get back to, and it's worth pointing out that Fox, the network that did this, is Brit Hume's own network. The Fox host who was criticizing the Trump administration for what they've done to the Associated Press. But again, while we're on the subject of Trump's FCC and his weaponization of the state against media he doesn't like, I want you to hear a bit more from Jerry Nadler, the former ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee.
Trump himself has made it abundantly clear that he thinks any journalist who dares to criticize him is a, quote, enemy of the people. He has even threatened to revoke the broadcast licenses, we just saw that, of news organizations that criticize his administration. This assault on free speech is being orchestrated by Trump's pick for FCC chair, Brendan Carr, a right-wing co-author of Project 2025. Carr is using his position to punish the news outlets that diverge from the White House's approved narrative. Acting in violation of the Constitution, federal law, and the ICC's own mission, Chairman Carr has decided to use the agency to harass and intimidate news organizations that stray from the White House's talking points. One of Carr's first actions was to revive 3 complaints made to the FCC by a conservative group, the Center for American Rights, against ABC, CBS, and NBC for their critical coverage of President Trump. For the record, there was a complaint that Carr didn't revive. Of course, it was a claim made against Fox News, a news organization that agreed to pay an $800 million settlement to a private company, Dominion Voting System, and admitted to promoting false claims of fraud during the 2020 election related to the company's voting machines.
That's the point that I've been making in my coverage. I'm glad Jerry Nadler is clearly a fan of Pondering Politics. Mr. Nadler, please be sure to like and subscribe. But that's precisely the point that I've been making, which is, okay, so there were multiple complaints against CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox News, and President Biden's nonpartisan FCC chair dismissed them all, saying, hey, listen, we don't want to be seen as chilling on free speech. Donald Trump's hyperpartisan ideologue, Brendan Carr, steps in and says, actually, I will revive the complaints and begin investigations on the networks that were critical of Trump, but Fox, which is obviously very pro-Trump, so pro-Trump that they had to pay $800 million to settle a defamation lawsuit against Dominion Voting Systems because they signal boosted Trump's lies about the 2020 election, but we're going to protect them. So again, just shamelessly unprincipled, shamelessly partisan, inferior morally and principally to his Democratic counterpart, but he doesn't care because he has the power. Right now, they have the power, and they intend to ruthlessly exploit that power. And it doesn't seem that there's much by way of checks and balances, right? It also opens the door, I would argue, for more ruthless Democrats to also give Republicans a taste of their own medicine. And quite frankly, I support that. I do think that the next time a Democrat wins the presidency, they should also put a partisan ideologue as chair of the FCC just to scare the shit out of right-wing media, just to make the point, hey, listen, maybe we shouldn't go down this road, but if we do, we'll play tit for tat. Tit for tat is the only way that you will ever stop Republican abuses, whether we like it or not. Last thing I'll say is this. I don't know what's going to happen with the Associated Press. Trump might change his mind in a week or whatever, but again, it's part of a pattern, which is that Donald Trump opposes free speech. Donald Trump opposes free press. He is much more anti-free speech and much more anti-free press than any of his Democratic peers. And it's so bad that even a legendarily conservative Fox News host is publicly calling him out, risking severe political blowback against him. That's where we are. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.